project, because it's a little bit complicated than what is usual, since there is one international tender that will be published during close to the end of October this year. We would like to hear from the participants what they think about the process, what available technology there is, how they see it happening, and we'll give, I believe, enough time for question and discussion, and to explain what kind of partnerships we're looking for in this project. The staff from Eilat municipality that is in the meeting is Asaf Admon, who is the head of the environmental unit in Eilat, and under his guidance and management, we achieve what you're about to see. Anna Lisson, which is the international relation in Eilat, and she's accompanying us in all our projects and exploration for new projects. Myself, which I'm in this project, I'm the technical project manager, but I'm also the smart city coordinator in Eilat. Avi Naim, who is our newest recruit, who is now in the position of the international project managers in the municipality of Eilat. And Chedva Perit, which I'm not sure if she joined, she's the administrator management of all the projects. So we'll start with the introduction of the project, the aim and the scope of the project, what is the innovation in the tender process. We'll give some time for questions and answers for the project itself, about the project and the process. We'll give you as much information as we can about the local pilot in Eilat, as well as the other pilots, briefly. And we'll give also some time for questions and answer about the local site. Then we'll talk about the next steps, and we'll give some time for discussion there also. So, as you may know or not, around 90% of existing buildings that will be in operation by 2050 will not have a clear path to achieve near zero standards. That means that, for example, in Israel, by 2050, it's expected that the population will be more than 20 million. It has implication, of course, on all our daily life, on the infrastructure in the city, and also on long-term achievement of zero or reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. On a macro level, buildings account for more than 40% of energy consumption and produce more than 36% of the greenhouse gas emission. The renovation rate is very low, and usually also in most cases in municipality, it's being done only on not preventative maintenance, but on breakage maintenance. And also we know that mostly in the public center, it's one of the main issues in the existing buildings. And of course, specifically in the public sector, also the workforce in the municipality is not, there isn't enough of it, and also a lot of the time we need external expertise in order to achieve a professional maintenance or professional assimilation of new technologies, and that's also a barrier. When we go to a deeper level in the public sector, it is fragmented, means that we deal only with chillers at one time, and then on lighting, and then on insulation, and we don't usually have on the municipality a holistic view of what is needed as a whole. But because we all the time deal with the breakage or a system that that are broken need now special attention SOS, we never achieve a whole and the holistic view of what is needed. And then we also get a lot of, we don't have uniformity, means we have a lot of kind of different system in different buildings, and that also create higher prices and also more difficulties in the maintenance or operation of the buildings. It's at least in Israel, when we talk about energy service companies or other modes of investments in energy efficiency or in renewables, it's almost today, it's almost not exists. It used to be, but the most municipalities or most investors look for easier places to put their money than in the public domain, because of the reasons that I mentioned and others. So in this project, we try to answer at least part of the barriers that I just mentioned, and to create methodology that can be replicated later on in order to answer these challenges and to lower the prices of the assimilation, installation, and the maintenance of all these systems on a large scale. In Europe, it's planned to renovate 35 million inefficient building by 2030. Not sure if that's going to happen. Reduce emission at least by 55% by 2030, and to build the foundation for a climate neutral Europe by 2050. And all of that to promote sustainable design. It's a huge challenge, and right now a lot of money is being invested through Horizon Europe or other programs to achieve that, but the rate of accomplishment is low. In procuRE, I just mentioned the challenge. We recruited 7.68 million euros for external R&D services to answer these challenges. We have 6 pilot sites in the project, 3 office buildings and 3 schools, Barcelona, Eilat, Istanbul, Nuremberg, Valence, and Villanova in Gaia in Porto. And the procurement, the tender process will encompass all these pilots. The tender will be executed internationally for all of them together. And the budget will be spent in 3 phases. That is part of the competition. So our common challenge for all pilots is to design, develop, and test a solution which cuts the need for off-site supply of energy, electricity mainly, in existing buildings. The solution enables public bodies to make rapid decisions on turnkey delivery of cost-effective, advanced renewable energy retrofit of extensive stock of public buildings. During the process of the tender, the supplier will test, validate their package, their offer, and demonstrated in the buildings provided by the pilot that I just mentioned. And one of the measures to choose the right pilot or suppliers will be, major one will be the ability to replicate it and to make it economical viable after the project. The PCP, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a pre-commercial procurement. That means that there are two ways to look on it. One is that the entire process or the view, the holistic view of one key turnkey project for public buildings that encompass everything. For example, in Eilat, we talk about air condition, lighting, electricity cabinets, smart management systems, storage, energy storage, renewable energy production. All of that is expected to be delivered as a turnkey project, as a package. The entire process is related as innovative and pre-commercial, but also the technologies within the project, we encourage them to be innovative and pre-commercial, meaning if someone can offer a innovative chiller or mod of cooling a building, the terminal, that is pre-commercial, but it's after testing and it's on a more mature stage than lab results, that would get higher score than a solution that is already well known and established in the market. The core feature of the pre-commercial procurement are it's an instrument for public procurement to achieve R&D services on one end, and the other one, it creates opportunities for the companies to gain leadership in new markets and to showcase their new technologies. Because that we are talking about public bodies, cities, then the process itself that is under the law of public tender is a very demanding and a strict process, and therefore it's also create a stamp of success, of quality for the ones that are being chosen. And also each municipality has a lot of more buildings than in the pilot, which is one. And therefore, there is high probability of replication. It's a tool for innovation. The European Commission sees the need in innovation, but we are offering also the market. It's being developed in stages. In each stage we test, and I will describe it a few slides on what is the process, and you will see that in each stage we test the outcome and choose the successful bidders for the next stage. Because of the process, we reduce the risk for the procurers in the process, and the supplier retain their intellectual property rights, ownership on what they develop. We don't, the municipalities, the procurers don't have any gains in that. You interact closely with 6 procurers, of course, internationally, operating about 21,000 buildings, public buildings that are a potential for replication. Its visibility on the EU level as well as the Israel level. As I mentioned, the package that you will offer, or the offers of the packages, then can be later on after the project. It doesn't mean that you need to replicate all the aspects, but maybe if you showcase that even some aspects in the package are more relevant for different buildings, that can be applied more easily, since there is already a showcase of the entire package in one place that later on can be broken up for its different technologies or systems. Our aim, the project aim and scope. So as I mentioned before, we would like to achieve an easy way to replicate and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, if not before that, and to find a solution or a platform that we can achieve that. So we looking for a solution or a platform to develop methods and tools to assess any public building for a advanced retrofit into 100% renewable energy system supply. So after the project, when we'll have the tools, or the successful bidder will have the tool to take any building in a municipality and to assess what is needed in order to achieve the 100% renewable energy system supply, to design renovation packages with advanced building information modeling, compose and model the integration of components at low cost in order to be able to replicate it easily, to include an assessment framework to deliver procurers and investors with transparent choices of their options, to deploy an efficient co-design procedure with procurers not requiring complete or deeply specialized expertise, and to offer financing or contracting models, increasing the procurer's ability to start the renovation wave. We would like each part of it to be demonstrated in existing buildings. So 100% renewable supply has to be on site and close to the property for all demands, heat, cold, or electricity. And that's part of the demands of the conditions. Meaning if I have a very large parking lot near the building, but it's not the integral part of the building, that is not the source to install PV panels, but it needs to be integrated in the building itself. It cannot be outside of the building. So we're talking about the walls or the ceilings. We need to give 100% renewable energy systems that follows the demand as much as possible, 24/7, 365 days a year. Of course, we understand that is a very aspiring level, especially when we talk about using only the premises of the building. So the goal is to achieve it to the largest, but it's understandable if it's not 100%, but 80 or 90% of the year. We need to ensure that there is an easy configuration to adopt to different regulations and needs in the energy usage, also in the view of the future, in the changes in the energy market. Specifically, for example, if we talk about electric car in the near future, installation of mass electric vehicle assimilation in the cities. So we need to take that into account when we think about the near future or the long future, about the energy demands in the building, climate change, higher temperature, more air condition needs, etc. Also, occupant behavior and comfort, thermal comfort needs to be considered. Thermal comfort, but also usage comfort systems that will create higher complexity in doing the building maintenance, or creating a complexity in building usage by the tenants, will get lower grades in the tender. Provide innovative and cost-efficient training to building operator to ensure optimal operation. I just talked about it. And tools to operate and maintain building at a distance. So everything needs to be also controlled from far, from as autonomous as possible. The buyer groups defines the problem, as I just mentioned, and the award criteria for the tender. But the suppliers define the solution, what they can offer in order to answer the challenge. So we try to avoid from defining what kind of system we want to see. So we are open for new technologies or new ways to cool or to heat the buildings, or to manage the buildings, or to light, to insert lighting to the building, or even in terms of the storage or renewable energy. We're open for new technologies that are already after a lab scale tests. During our analysis, we identify 8 blocks that having major shortcomings, which require progress beyond the state of the art that is known now. And they are the central elements for suppliers to describe their solutions. And we talk about energy production and distribution components within the building, behind the meter, with an option also to connect to the local network. The energy storage components, the energy management components, system package design, system package monitoring and management, energy service contracting and financing, professional training and occupant education. These are the 2 last blocks that I mentioned, but are not the least, because a lot of the time we put very advanced systems, but if they are not accessible for maintenance for the occupants, then eventually they are not being used. And a lot of the time we see that in public buildings that we try to accommodate different challenges, but eventually they are not accessible or not easily understood for the tenants or for the professional, and they are left out without use. The building block system package design, so the rationale is that we want, or the system becoming more advanced every year, and the BIM and the BMS bring the potential to guide the design process and optimize building operation. Synergic utilization of individual effective components can ensure sustainability from both a technical and economic perspective. We would, as example, feedback loops in the process during various design phases can further optimize the design. So it's an ongoing process that all the time gets the feedback and the optimization. And the system specifications in the offers needs to be in focus from the planning phase. I think I mentioned part of it in the last slide, but we want to see a holistic approach for the entire systems in the buildings, as well as education and training, and to make sure that the project result in buildings are can be replicated and operate as designed, and not being separated into its solely into its components. In order to get to the actual process, I will just, so in terms of the difference between PCP, pre-commercial procurements, to traditional procurements, here in the pre-commercial procurement, we created a buyers group internationally for all the projects together. Well, usually in traditional, as we discussed before, in traditional procurement, the single departments or single We do it for each city, or most of the time for each system by itself. We look only on cooling, only on heating, or only on renewable energy assimilation. And here we try to do it also as a holistic view, but also to create a buyers group, so we'll be in an advantage for the suppliers or for the consortiums that will apply, looking at all the pilots together. In this process, there is, of course, a very high degree of innovation, and R&D effort is required. While usually in traditional procurement process, we're looking for the standard, well-known, experienced systems and bidders. So it opens actually new markets and is open for less experienced bidders or technologies, in our case. In this process, we also define that we want to look at prototypes and prototype development in the medium and long term. While in traditional procurement, there is usually we look for mature product and service. Here it might be that we'll have different suppliers, so the consortium or the successful bidder or bidders will be composed of several suppliers, while, as I mentioned before, usually a single contract with a single supplier is what on a traditional procurement is hired. Here we expect, or we see the potential of new intellectual property right to be raised from the project, and they are belongs to the, as I mentioned before, mostly or all of it to the successful bidder. In this PCP, there is a special legal framework in Horizon 2020 for the PCP, which is different from the national public procurement rules. In order to reduce the risk, we expect the development to be in multiple phases in the versus traditional procurement that is done in one phase. So we are at the first phase, phase 0, which each one of the pilot site done an energy audit for its building and started to define what he sees the challenges in the building and what is looking for in terms of the services he would like to get from the building. This process would take place, is taking place already from December, and it will continue till September. Each pilot site is doing an OMC, an open market consultation, as we are doing now, in order to give as many details as possible to the procurers or the potential bidders, and to also hear from you, and we'll do that soon, to hear your view on the process, as well as what is available and what is achievable in terms of the technologies. It is expected that on October this year, we'll open the call for tenders. It will be open till February 22. After that, we'll have the first qualification of the suppliers, and among the proposal, we'll choose the first one, which will also do the solution design. They will have to do it between March 22nd to May 22nd. We have a budget that is specifically for that, for about 1.1 million euros for phase 1. After getting the result, again, we'll assess the answers and the documents, and we'll decide or give a scorecard for each bidder, and they decide who is going to the second phase, where detailed planning, design, and prototype needs to be shown, and that will take place between June 22nd to January 23, with a budget of approximately 2.3 million euros to be paid for the prototyping and detailed design. On January 23, we'll get all the answers and the prototypes, and again, we'll give a score for each supplier, and decide who is going for the third phase, where there is already a simulation in the buildings and showing the work of the proposed system, and most of the budget will be paid there, of about 4.2 million euros. That will happen between February 2023 to May 2024, which is the end of the project. And then after assimilating it in each pilot, of course, if it's answer our expectations that it will be easily replicable and also easily economical viable, and all the challenges that I mentioned before, then it is expected that the municipalities participating in this project, but also other ones, would like to incorporate the solutions in other building blocks in their cities. We expect that at phase one, at least 8 suppliers will be funded, but it will be decided later on. We'll have a duration of about 3 months for the concept design, the solution, the architectural solution and technical specifications. And we'll select suppliers amongst the offers to continue to the second stage. In this stage, in phase one, we expect to get a detailed report describing the solution and a detailed plan for the prototyping and testing activities in phases 2 and 3. In phase 2, we expect that at least half of the suppliers will be funded. Again, that will be decided according to the answers. The duration for the second phase will be 8 months, from June 22nd to January 23, with a maximum budget of 2.3 million euros. We'll select the suppliers that will develop the most promising ideas into well-defined prototypes. The expected output is a prototype specification and demonstration, and a plan to the development of the solution in the actual buildings. In phase 3, out of those, 2 or 3 suppliers are expected to be funded, and they will have 16 months to apply their prototype on a larger scales on the buildings, and already achieving or assimilating the systems into the pilots in each one of the cities. And we expect to implementation in 6 testing sites, and then overall assessment and success verifications of those in the pilot sites. Later on, we'll also update the cost-benefit forecast, and we would like to see also in a preliminary business plan how the solution that is being assimilated, verified in the pilot sites would be able to replicate itself easily in other places. The call for tender is expected to begin in October 2021, and it will last till February 2022. You can check the project website. Anna, maybe you should put it in the chat so people can get into it. And you can, of course, we have LinkedIn groups and also a newsletter that you can follow. So just to make sure, this is a tender. It's a PCP tender. It's not a grant. Financial offer are requested for each phase up to this mentioned ceiling. The offer has to include all costs, including tax, if applicable. The payment is based on the offered price after receipt of invoice and approval of the work. All core requirements are derived from the EU Directive on Competitions. So a tender is open to all types of operators, company or other types of legal entities, regardless of the size of governance structure. Both single entity or joint tender offers, consortium, are welcome and possible. The call will be open to all participants as long as minimum of 50% of the project R&D activities or budget take place in the EU or associate countries. So at least 50% of the project R&D activity needs to be in the associate countries of the EU or in the EU itself. Israel is associate country, of course. Participation in the open market consultation is not a condition for submitting a tender, meaning it's not that only those who now participate in each of the OMC, in each pilot and the international one are the only ones eligible to participate, but it's open to everyone. The submission will be electronic by email. There will be 3 to 5 months for submission starting from October 21. We will publish the exact dates with when we publish the tender. The official language is English, so all tenders needs to be submitted in English. IPR sharing if suppliers do not exploit the results. So all bidders will be provided with templates and extensive guidance for the submission and to be sure that whoever wants to submit a proposal is eligible to submit a proposal will have all the guidance and the templates in order to be filled. So the different tendering sections will be the administrative, the financial, and the technical. Each one will have its own PDF file. And if you submitted a tender before, that it's not that different from regular tender in terms of the administrative section, the legal capacity, they make sure that you stand in the baseline qualification requirements and that you don't disqualify according to the exclusion criteria, that you stand in the economic and financial requirements in the tender as well as in the technical and professional requirements. In the financial section, the tender must include detailed financial offer specifying the binding unit price for all that item needs for carrying out phase 1 to be evaluated, an estimation for phases 2 and 3, so we can have an estimation for the overall, to make sure that the overall budget is sufficient for all the bidders that we want to move from phase 1 to phase 2 and then for 3. In the technical section, the tender documents will include the request for tenders with the exact award criteria, so it will be open, transparent, and clear to everyone what are the criteria. The technical challenge brief structured by award criteria, including an annex with building information for each pilot. So we'll have all the information on the pilots and everything that is needed to be as detailed and accurate as possible. The template for technical application structured by award criteria with guidance on expected inputs. So we'll understand what is expected from you in terms of the technical application forms. The suppliers will be requested to describe the overall methodology and how the solution is designed to accommodate any given building, to calculate the core indicator for selected building, to describe the total cost of ownership, and if you have other ideas of financial models or commercialization of the plans, that will be welcome also in order to evaluate it. Project management approach, including a concept for co-design procedure with procurers from design to implementation in building, including training, as I mentioned before. For each of the three phases, the same rules on contract monitoring, payments, and intellectual property rights are applied. So that's the same for the any of the phases. If there will be question about that, I will get to that later. Now, if you have any questions or remarks, I will be happy to answer them.
Okay, so we have a few questions from the chat and also from WhatsApp. So I will read it one by one. Ofer was asking, what are the solutions that you suggest about zero electricity?
There is all the time this questions also inside the group, if we should define the solutions or if we defined the challenge. And since I'm sure everyone in this list have their own concept how that can be achieved, or if that can be achieved and what systems can be incorporated for that. But I'm not sure, I'm hesitating to give examples, but let's do that. So in Eilat, we're dealing with, of course, the challenge of the heat. And if we look into the future, also increase in heat days during the year and extreme heat waves. So, of course, one of the part of the solution would be to take into account the air condition in the building. And how can we assimilate innovative or new kind of more efficient air conditions in the old terminal? I will give, I will get to that. I will get to that terminal soon because the terminal is becoming the new innovation center in Eilat. We'll describe it in the next paragraphs, but part of the solution would be air condition. And in Europe, also it's getting warmer, so probably cooling and heating in the building. Also, today there is a simulation of storage in terms of lithium ion, but if we can find a more sustainable and more innovative, cost-effective storage systems, that would be considered more, will probably get higher scoring than when proposing regular off-the-shelf lithium-ion storage system. And that's correct for any system that will apply. The main system that we talk about is basically, we need to look at the consumers. So we're talking about light, and it can be also natural light harvesting, getting it into the building. Of course, it needs to be connected with the artificial lighting, so we'll keep the same lighting standards in the building to compensate when the light is poor. We're talking about air conditions, we talk about storage, and we talk about renewable energy production. All of that needs to be connected together with the building building a management system. I hope that answered the question, because I don't want to give specific example for system or actual system that can be implied, because we want to hear new ideas, and I don't want to hear my ideas. No? I want to hear yours.
Okay, if we can continue, there were a few questions by Bernadette, so I guess that you answered one of them, but if you can elaborate on the location of the prototypes.
The location of the prototypes. The prototype is safe at the second stage. They can be on the building itself, but they can also be on the lab, but to make sure that it can be easily later on moved to the site and assimilate on a larger scale. Of course, we would rather to see the pilot already working, the prototype already working on the site itself. We expect to have 6 pilot sites, right? There are 6 pilot sites in the project in different locations in Europe and in Israel. And that's the places that the project will happen. I think I answered the amount of suppliers. I just want to make sure it's understood that eventually the amount of suppliers that will move from phase 1 to 2 and to 3 depends on the solutions and on the bidders, or the documents that we'll receive, on the answers. According to that, we'll decide how many can move from one phase to the other.
Okay, so moving forward, Oz is asking, is the stated budget provided to the suppliers in each stage?
So I mentioned the total amount of the budget that for each phase that it's still need to be considered. When we'll get it, I mentioned in one of the last slides that I just showed that as part of the proposal for phase 1, we would like to see an estimation of the cost for phase 1, 2, and 3. That means that according to that, we'll be able to reevaluate the budget for each phase. If needed, we'll make adjustments. The overall budget of the project, including everything, including the salaries of everyone that work right now on the project, the entire budget is 7.68 million euros. And that's for the 6 sites. So it needs to be also taken into account. 1 minute, let me just check one thing. Yeah, that's the entire sum. It will be, of course, divided according to the solution for each pilot site. Doesn't mean that each site will receive the exact same amount, but according to the solution, each site will get the exact budget that it needs.
Okay, so we have a few more. Giorgio asked to ask a voice question, so please, Giorgio, go ahead.
Yes, good morning. I'm Giorgio Pristo from Major Cities of Europe. I have many questions. That's why I asked to talk, because otherwise I would spend money in the chat, time in the chat. Now, the first question is about skills. Now, the tenders, usually this kind of tenders should come from municipality, as it is the case we heard now. Now, the key question we have all around Europe is where are the skills? I mean, to call for standards, you need really a set of skills which are not usual in municipalities. Is it something that you are planning to study and maybe create a frame on which other cities can join and call for tenders later on? This is my first question. And the other question is how other cities can join, at least as observers in what you are developing. And then I have other questions, but maybe you can answer to these ones.
Sure. Hi, Arjun.
Hi, hi.
So today we are working, basically there are 3 or 4 teams that are working on the tender process and the criteria and developing the exact, and I see the question also from Daniel. So I'll try to answer that also. There are several teams. One is working on the tender itself and all the legal framework, the criteria, how to choose, what kind of consortia we are looking for, what the consortia need to show. All of that is being built as we speak. You know, we don't have much time, but on the other hand, it's a huge tender. And so there are teams from each one of the pilot sites, together with the coordinator, together with Empirica, which manage the entire project. We are working on exactly that. The other one is technical team, which works what is the specification for each building, what do we expect to see in each building, to set exactly the focus in each building, what we want to see. For example, it might be that we'll decide eventually that because of various reasons, in Eilat, we don't want to handle the air condition, or that will be on a separate or based on the existing technology that we have. So we'll supply you the information on that, but we won't expect from you to give us new air condition technologies. Or so the technical group is working on specifying exactly in each case, in each pilot, what is expected to be delivered, what systems within the building needs to be answered. And again, that would be part of the tender and the specifications in the tender group. The other one is we talk about the tender, the technical. Well, there is other groups dealing with the legal framework and the management of the entire project. One key group is working specifically on the criteria for choosing the right bidders and how to make sure that the process and the criteria are open and to everybody to see. What I hope I answered your first question, Giorgio, but if not, you should clarify it again.
Yeah, just one point. This is your case. You have the skills, I know, and the other cities that are in the consortium have the skills. The question is, any city in Europe is absolutely committed to achieve such results. Is there a menu that you can provide to them how to build the skills? Because otherwise, they won't be able to make any tender out of it.
Yeah. So eventually, after the project, one of the key elements that we expect to have is exactly that, this guiding book, how to achieve, mass assimilations of technologies in public building blocks in order to achieve the aspiring goal of reduction. I don't want to say 100%, but close to 100% by 2050 in order to tackle climate change. Regarding the ability for other cities to follow or to learn through the process, I'm sure they are welcome. And Anna, we should talk about that with Georg to make sure how we can send maybe a link or a way for cities to join as followers or as some kind of a virtual demo sites or anything like that. The managing body of the project is Empirica. And Asaf, you remember where is Georg from? Sweden or Switzerland?
Switzerland, as far as I remember.
Switzerland, yes. Yeah. So they are the managing body of the project.
So I see that you answered one of the last questions, but I have few also written to me privately. So Simon was asking, what size of storage system do you expect you will need? Energy vault storage systems are suitable for applications that need at least 40 megawatts per hour. If you need a smaller system, please clarify.
So we don't talk about megawatts, we talk about kilowatts. Usually in this kind of in offices and in schools. For example, in another project that we have in Eilat, which I will present soon, we expect to have about 400 kilowatt hour storage system with about 100 kilowatt capacity. So it's about 4 hours, or not about, it's max 4 hours storage per day, per cycle. So again, it's relatively small scale systems. We do want suppliers to tackle also the energy efficiency, not only looking about the storage and the renewable energy, but also to look on the consumers. With the tender, we will send the building audits, energy audits, so you'll have all the information needed in order to answer that.
All right. Shashank was asking, can the solution include construction change? For example, facade replacement, roof renovation?
Yes, we also hope to do that before the project. For example, in Eilat, we do plan to invest in the building to make sure that the roof and at least part of the envelope is suited for a simulation of panels, storage, air conditioning, whatever else is there. So the municipality already invested in the building to make sure that it can be more ready and to invest. So the project needs less to invest in the infrastructure of the building itself, but more in the innovation. We do expect to receive, for example, a solution that take into account the building insulation. As you know or don't know, a lot of the buildings in Eilat are not climatized. But maybe if one of you or all of you think that they can give a better offer that take into account also the building insulation, that would be also I think, good offer.
All right. I think maybe one or few more. Since the tender is a long process, is it possible to show you like a brief of the suggestion to see if it's at all relevant?
Again? Maybe, okay.
No, so it was written in Hebrew, so I'm trying to to translate. Because the tender process is a long process, is it possible to send us a brief of the suggested project to see if it is relevant in the first place?
So from what I trying to understand, because all of the criteria will be published in the tender, but if what you're saying is that for the first phase, you don't see that there is enough time to answer and to build the consortia, and therefore you want to understand before that if you can answer the challenge, we can check that, but in any term, in any case, the full criteria and the full requirements will be published in the tender itself. Anna, we can examine with Georg if we can, if prior to the tender, to do some kind of a process to give information out about the building audit information.
Okay, that's great. And let me just see, I think you answered most of the question. Danielle, was your question answered?
I think it was, and I see another question about requirement for energy management system. So we don't. We want that was asked by Avi Klein. So the thing is that we want to see integration between the systems. So the management system will work with the air condition or heating systems that will work with maybe lighting or other systems, but we don't define the actual solution. You need to define it. And we don't relate right now to standard 5281. We don't require someone to achieve or to stand in the standards, realizing that the terminal is a very old building that was built in different phases of its life. So we don't expect eventually to achieve the standard. If we do that, that would be excellent, but it's not a demand. Is this Shashank Pandi? Could you explain the question?
Yeah, the question is, for example, the phase one is having 1.15 million budget. So when there are 8 suppliers, this budget is divided into the 8 suppliers, or every supplier is getting 1.15 million.
Okay,
This
no,
is the
so
question,
it's being divided. Yeah, now understood. It's being divided for each phase according to the decided budget. It will be divided between the suppliers. It's not that each one received the first stage is a design. So we'll take 1.3, and each one, at least on the first stage, I assume that each one will get more or less the same amount in order to achieve the goal of the first design.
Thank
We'll
you.
be happy to hear your opinion also. If you don't think it's enough, or if it's too much, or if you don't need any of that, that would be great also. So if you have any thoughts about that.
Okay, thank you. Can you elaborate more in the direction of intellectual property? Once a supplier crosses all these 3 phases, who has the intellectual property rights over the concept?
So basically, it's the consortia. It's an agreement of the consortia itself that they have the intellectual property right. Let's say that the intellectual property right is somehow it's the combination of everything together. So that needs to be decided within the consortia that, or the successful bidder, which is the entire group. We don't hold any of the intellectual property rights. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, so what I would like to present now is the actual project in Eilat, which among the other projects is relatively different because of the building itself and what Eilat is planning to do with the building. So for anyone who doesn't know, not from Israel, so Eilat, located at the southern tip of Israel, on the shores of the Red Sea. It's located in extreme weather conditions. Right now it's about, I guess, I'm not in Eilat, but I guess it's about 43 degrees in the city. So we need to take that into account when we're planning any solution regarding storage, renewable energy, air conditioning or lighting, or energy management systems. The weather have high implication on that. Also, then to take into account that we're located in the desert, and therefore sandstorms or harsh weather conditions needs to be taken into account, as well as being on the shore of the Red Sea. And That implies also that corrosion or salt may hurt also the systems. The 6 pilots, as I mentioned before, are in Slovenia, Germany, Portugal, Spain, Turkey, and in Israel. The building in Israel was built in 1960. It's the old terminal in the airport. And it's becoming, Eilat wants to create, or is already on this design phase of making it an off-grid innovation center. A little bit background about the city. So the city has 65 residents. It has about pre-corona 3 million tourists a year. It has a port, academia with Ben-Gurion University and the Inter-University Institute on the shores of the Red Sea, which all the public universities in Israel take part in the research there. We are in development stages of a marine biotechnology park, some of it based on the knowledge gained from the biotechnology research center located in Eilat. And it has the most northern coral reefs in the world. Right now, the vision of the city is to achieve 100% energy independence through renewable sources, and that's already happening in these days. Again, as I mentioned before, in Israel, there's going to be a very high raise in population. By 2050, Israel will have more than 20 million residents. And part of the reason to achieve 100% energy independent or the ability to disconnect public buildings or other neighborhoods from the grid is to create higher resiliency, energy resiliency, as well as to make sure that the city gives services under extreme weather conditions or under catastrophes. Besides that, if we can do that by also lowering the electricity cost in Eilat, that would be also very high, very beneficiary for the residents, tourists, and the city itself. Eilat and the Eilot region already achieved 70% or more than that, already 75 or more % of its daily usage from renewable sources. Now with the connections of the Timna field, we get already to 100% renewable energy during the day. And part of what we're doing now, and I'll explain it, show it soon, is how to start shifting access energy to the night or to hours where we don't have enough solar radiation for PV. Of course, we Eilat also all the time work on the energy efficiency project and energy management project in the building, lighting, street lighting, air conditions, and more. Part of what we're doing in the environmental unit is we developed a methodology to apply and to successfully participate as pilot sites in a Horizon 2020, now Horizon Europe projects. Today in Eilat, there are 6 projects. I will briefly describe and maybe just give some insights for one or 2 of them. RISPAC deals with preparing the population for times of a catastrophe or a need, and work on assimilating protocols and the volunteers to work within the population when an earthquake will happen or when extreme weather condition will happen. procuRE we're talking about now. Leonardo is about assimilation, micromobility, mass assimilation of micromobility in the city. Berlin deals with disconnecting 2 schools, one in Eilat and one in Eilot, from from the local grid, or developing the ability to disconnect the schools through energy efficiency, PV, and the storage. That's done with standard off-the-shelf system, and it expected that the tenders for this project will be published in the next month or two. So I advise whoever is interested, you can send an email for myself or to Anna or anyone else from the staff, so we can make sure that when we'll inform you when the tender is published. News Grids is a virtual demo site of another project, and it takes the city and specifically the tourist area and virtually plan to virtually assess what needed to do in order to disconnect the entire city and specifically the tourist area from the grid, how much assimilation of PV, how much efficiency we need to achieve to all the chillers and the air conditioning in the hotels, what kind of solutions there are in the market to do that, how much storage capacity is needed, if we need to do it on a local scale, or on a macro scale for the entire city and the region. So a lot of questions that are being dealt now. We are in the middle of the project now, and a very interesting one. Project O deals with effluents from on new ways to deal with the waste water, sanitary or fish ponds. In Eilat, there are two pilots, one for the fish ponds, how to achieve zero discharge of effluents from fisheries, fish ponds. And the other ones deals with a high concentration of chemicals in the sanitary waste streams, because all of them get eventually to the waste treatment plant, which is a biological one, and it does not decompose or treat antibiotics, hormones, or other kind of chemicals that are in the process. All of them eventually go for agriculture and back to the water supply or to the fruit. So we're looking for solution to prevent that from happening. SUDEP, it's a project that ended in 2017. It took a whole approach of a neighborhood in Eilat to do energy efficiency project in each one of the sector, public, meaning schools, kindergarten, synagogue, commercial, street lighting, and also private households. We achieve about 30% reduction on average on everything. And because of that project, we are now, since then, we assimilated a lot of the insights from that project into the city. And we expect that to be one of the outcomes of procuRE and the rest of the project that you see here, since once we are able to show success and that it's economical viable, the city adopt it and spread it for the rest of the city and the region. And just want to emphasize, the view of economic feasibility is not the same when we talk about the public sector or the private sector, meaning that even if we look at a return of the investment that is longer than 8 or 9 years, sometimes, depending on the project, it's still financially viable for a municipality. Well, usually on the private sector, we're looking for 3 or 5 years return on the investment. So you need to take that into account when you think about also procuRE and what is financially viable. As a public body, we don't look for a fast return on the investment, but want to see an ongoing, even if it's long-term change. The project itself is actually in the premises of the old airport. This is already an old picture, aerial photographs. You can see here basically that what happened is that the airstrip divided the city. On the eastern side, the lower picture, you can see all the hotels. On the upper side, you can see the commercial area, industry area, and the residential area, which actually the airport divided the city between those two. And now what happened is that we reconnect the city with roads. It's already happened. There is road that already crossed the airport in a few places to connect it. And the plans for the air trip is to become, on the southern part of it, to become a park with attractions, also a walking path, gardens, and attractions. Within that, we have the terminal building that become the innovation center of the city, showcasing all the work that we've been doing, and also offering place for startups to sit and work and to develop their ideas. The middle section of the airfield would become a hotels, commercial and residential area, mixed uses. And the northern part of the airstrip will become logistic area. And that's being already done, right? There is already excavation and work on the ground itself. The terminal is already under planning. It's internal sections of it. It's comprised of 2 floors. The upper one, which is on the street level, and the lower one. We're going to change the entire design internally in order to create the innovation center. So we'll have here offices, auditorium, food section, makers lab, or places for startups or laboratories to develop ideas that related with the city's aspiration, as I presented before. It will also have part of it, about 1/3 of it will be museum that will change according to along the year. And that is planned to be on the street level. We are now dealing if the lower level need to be integrated as well. And I hope that next week we'll already have the final decision, and then within 2 weeks we already have detailed planning of the entire terminal, so we can also present that to the bidders in the procuRE project. I'll be happy to answer questions now about the building itself or the local site as much as I can. If there isn't any questions, I'll be happy to continue.
There are no questions on the chat, but maybe somebody would like to freely ask questions. Go ahead.
Okay. Next steps. Submit your offer. So now we are basically finalizing the open market consultation. There will be, Anna, we should send it also through the chat, or whoever registered, there will be an international open market consultation where all of us together, all the group, all the teams, all the pilot sites will be on the same virtual room, presenting and answering questions of bidders. So I encourage you also to take part in that. We will publish the date, hopefully after this meeting, so you can register. If you enter the site or the project site, I'm sure you can find it there also. After the OMC, basically, we would like to help you also to build your consortia. So we're working on a matchmaking platform and helping you networking, so you can evaluate each other and see how you can connect and create partnerships. And we'll also send you a questionnaire about the OMC, and receive your feedback and answers in order to make sure that everything is adjusted and transparent. After that, when we'll get to just before the tender, if you are interested to procure, you think you have a technology, please send us a request or email on creating a list of preferred partner interaction in order to help you set the actual consortia and the partnership to answer the project. So we would like to help you to apply and to be the winner, all of you. We are on the stage of working on the tender. It will be finalized by the end of mid-September. So we'll have all the specification and the tender papers ready. So we'll publish the next stage would be the publish and create the matchmaking form. We'll send you a matchmaking form in order to create the platform so you can look for partners from all the participants in these meetings, but also from other OMC meetings. As I mentioned before, each pilot is doing his own OMC meeting. So we want you to interact with everybody so you can try to create a winning proposal. Of course, you are invited to all our social media platforms to interact with us and other procurers. And as part of that, we'll open the networking after the event and the fixed times to announce when more meetings for matchmaking will take place according to different subjects that we're dealing with. Again, please supply us with as many questions as possible. Also, you're invited to send us material, questions, or your systems of what you think can work, so we can also connect you with the right, do the matchmaking, but also to understand what we have and what technology is available and what kind of companies are interested in the process or in the answering the call. Any organization on the demand side is invited to become a preferred partner in order to lower, again, in order to encourage you to deal not only on storage and the renewable energy, but also answering how we can reduce or tackle energy efficiency in the building, which is a major challenge all over the world. That's it. Again, if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer you. We'll publish also the presentation for everybody so it can be available. Last chance to ask questions before we close. Thank you and close the meeting. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you very much. I appreciate your participation, questions, interaction, and I hope to see you again during the process and in the next meetings and networking. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.